Welcome to The Explainer. Imagine you're standing in a packed auction room back in 2014. The air is literally thick with anticipation, the gavel comes down, and a piece of automotive history is sold. The final price? A jaw-dropping $23 million. So today, we're going to explore exactly what makes a machine worth that kind of absolute fortune, as we look at the ultimate expression of Ferrari's early golden era, the 410 Superamerica, and its completely untamed racing sibling, the 410S.
Yeah, you heard that right. $23 million. That astronomical figure represents the auction value of just a single 410S. Now, a number like that absolutely demands attention, but more importantly, it begs a question, right? Why is this specific lineage so incredibly revered? Well, to understand that, we really need to trace the evolution of a car that represented the absolute apex of bespoke craftsmanship, massive displacement, and just raw, sometimes destructive power. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the birth of a legend, take a close look at the Lampredi V12 engine, and explore the custom coachwork and tail fins. Then, we'll shift gears into dominating the racetrack, cover the Series 3 finale, and wrap it all up with an enduring automotive legacy. Section 1. Birth of a legend. You know, to really get the 410 series, we have to look at where it came from. As the successor to the highly exclusive 375 America, the 410 wasn't just bred to be some luxurious grand tour for cruising down the coast. Nope, its roots were actually planted deep in the grueling dirt and asphalt of endurance racing. In fact, if you look at the original 410S racing variants, they bore a very specific serial number suffix, CM, and that stood for Carrera Mexicana, which was a direct nod to the brutal 5-day Carrera Pan America Marathon. But here's the crazy part. They never actually ran that race. Following the tragic Le Mans disaster of 1955, the Mexican Marathon was outright canceled. But the beast bred for that extreme endurance, it had already been born. Looking at the rapid progression of this legend, it made its public debut at the 1955 Paris Motor Show, but not as a finished car. It was displayed as a bare, naked chassis, just proudly showing off that massive engine to the world. A few months later, in 1956 in Brussels, the first completed body finally made an appearance. Fast forward through a couple of distinct series, and we hit the Series 3 debut in late 1958, leading to the absolute end of production by the middle of 1959. So we're talking about a brief but incredibly impactful 5-year span.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Lampredi V12 engine. Let's shift our focus to the sheer engineering marvel that truly defined this machine. We're talking about the Aurelio Lampredi designed Big-Block V12.
Meet the Type 126. This thing was a nearly 5.0-liter long-block engine originally dreamed up to hurl Formula One cars around the track at breakneck speeds, but Ferrari actually adapted it for these large displacement vehicles, specifically to appeal to their ultra-wealthy buyers, especially over in the American market. See, in America at the time, there really was no replacement for displacement, and Ferrari wanted to offer their top-tier clients a grand tour that could just effortlessly out-muscle literally anything else on the road.
Now, what's really interesting here is the massive evolution of the engine across the car's lifecycle. Think about that power jump, from an already staggering 340 brake horsepower in the early series to a mind-bending 400 brake horsepower for the Series 3 finale. That's absolutely insane for the 1950s, and the mechanical shifts that made all this possible were pretty clever. Larger carburetors, and most notably, taking those spark plugs from inside the V of the engine and relocating them to the outside.
Of course, you can't just drop that much sheer power into a standard frame and call it a day. The engineering reality was that the chassis had to be seriously structurally reinforced. Compared to the standard 250 GT models of the era, the 410's tubular steel ladder-type frame needed beefier, stronger bracing for one simple reason. It had to handle the intense, violent output and twisting torque generated by that massive Lampredi engine.
Section 3. Custom coachwork and tail fins. So the 410 Superamerica wasn't just a mechanical brute, right? It was also a roll-in canvas for high society. Let's shift our focus over to the transatlantic design influence and the bespoke luxury crafted for royals and mid-century industrialists.
Because these cars were so incredibly expensive and exclusive, they certainly weren't being mass-produced on some standard assembly line. Not even close. Instead, they were individually tailored through wildly varied one-off iterations by legendary Italian coach builders. We're talking absolute masters of the craft like Pininfarina, Scaglietti, Buono, and Ghia. They all had their hands in shaping the 410's identity, tailoring every single vehicle to the specific and honestly sometimes bizarre whims of their elite clientele.
And those whims very often reflected a fascinating transatlantic mid-century fascination. The designs were striking to say the least. Picture cantilevered roofs with no front screen pillars, wild split rear windows, and most controversially, massive American-style tail fins. Ghia, for instance, produced a version with incredibly long tail fins that actually drew direct inspiration from Chrysler dream cars of the era. It was just this wild, beautiful blend of Italian mechanical prowess and bold American space-age aesthetics.
Section 4. Dominating the racetrack. While the ultra-wealthy were busy cruising the boulevards in their finned luxury coupes, Ferrari was quietly unleashing a totally different beast on the circuits. Let's pivot from luxury street cars to the raw, untamed, track-focused racing variant, the legendary 410S. There's just a stark, night-and-day contrast between the two personalities of the 410. Out on the street, the Superamerica utilized a single plug ignition and was perfectly tailored for comfortable grand touring. But on the track, the 410S was an absolute monster. It featured a significantly wider track for better high-speed stability and a highly specialized twin-plug ignition. That means 2 spark plugs per cylinder, pushing power up to a massive 380 PS. This double ignition system was built specifically to survive the harshest endurance racing conditions imaginable.
But, as you might guess, all that explosive power came at a serious cost. Historical accounts from the time perfectly capture the sheer destructive force of that Lampredi engine. It was so immensely powerful that it would literally break the car's own driveline components. Rear axles and transmissions would frequently just tear themselves to pieces, trying to deliver all that V12 torque down to the tarmac. It was literally tearing itself apart.
Yet, despite that tremendous mechanical strain and the downright terrifying speeds, we're talking topping out over 188 miles per hour. Some of the greatest legends in all of motorsport history rustled this beast to victory. Drivers like Juan Manuel Fangio, Carroll Shelby, and Phil Hill somehow managed to tame the 410S. They went on to set lap records in Buenos Aires and secured numerous victories all across the United States and the Cuban Grand Prix. Just incredible driving.
Section 5. The Series 3 Finale. By the late 1950s, it really seemed like the era of the giant Lampredi engine was slowly drawing to a close. But in late 1958, Ferrari completely surprised the automotive world with one final, highly engineered hurrah.
Ferrari's engineering team truly flexed their muscles here, executing some precise steps to upgrade the engine to the ultimate Tipo 126/58 spec. By moving the spark plugs outside the V, they dramatically improved the gas flow. They also utilized individual intake ports, which actually finally cured the engine's notorious habit of smoking on startup. And by beefing up the head studs, they safely bumped the compression ratio from 8.5 all the way up to 9.0 to 1.
And the result of all that meticulous, brilliant engineering? 400. That's the astonishing peak brake horsepower the Series 3 engine produced. Now, for a road car back in 1958, that figure wasn't just impressive, it was absolutely stratospheric. There was almost nothing like it.
But sadly, this final masterpiece was pretty fleeting. Only 12 of these Series 3 cars were ever built. Every single one of them was left-hand drive, totally custom-ordered and impeccably finished, with production wrapping up entirely by June of 1959.
Section 6. An Enduring Automotive Legacy. So what exactly happened after the line ceased? Let's bring this explainer to its conclusion by looking at the lasting impact of the 410 series and its undeniable place in automotive history.
And this brilliantly illustrates the turning of a major page in the Ferrari playbook. The immediate successor, the 400 Superamerica, completely abandoned the massive Lampredi engine. Instead, Ferrari shifted their focus to a newly developed version of the Gioachino Colombo V12. That shift marked the definitive, absolute end of Ferrari's early large-displacement Lampredi era.
Today, the 410 survives as this fascinating dual-identity legend. On one hand, it was a track-dominating beast that literally tore up its own axles. Yet simultaneously, it was a luxurious status symbol, featuring some of the most bizarre, one-off transatlantic styling we've ever seen. Because of this extreme rarity and boundary-pushing performance, it remains a highly collectible, multi-million-dollar masterpiece of bespoke mid-century craftsmanship.
Which brings us to a final thought I want you to ponder. Considering its truly unrepeatable combination of that massive Formula One-derived Lampredi V12, its history of destroying the competition and sometimes itself out on the track, right alongside its status as an ultra-exclusive canvas for the world's greatest coach builders, does the 410 Superamerica stand alone as the ultimate apex of Ferrari's golden age? It is a fascinating question to consider. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks your curiosity to dive even deeper into the rich, roaring history of these incredible machines.